So the Prime Minister tonight reacting to what has happened over the course of the last 48 hours. His conclusion, very simple, it's all the far right, as if they're causing all of the problems. No, the far right are a reaction to fear, to discomfort, to unease that is out there shared by tens of millions of people. Let me be clear. I don't support street violence. I don't support thuggery in any way at all.
Nigel Farage, a figure long associated with the United Kingdom's Brexit movement and a stalwart of the country's right-wing politics, recently launched a scathing attack on the leadership of Keir Starmer, the current leader of the Labour Party and Prime Minister. Farage's criticism, sharp and unrelenting, centered around Starmer's perceived failures in dealing with the UK's immigration crisis, which has become an increasingly divisive and volatile issue in recent years.
Today we've learned what the Labour solution to the Channel crisis, or perhaps some would even say Channel emergency, is. Yes, Sir Keir Starmer has revealed all. A hard-hitting column in the Sun newspaper today. He is going to smash the gangs. He's going to treat the gangs as if they were terrorists. And we're going to take a lead in Europe. I have heard that once or twice before in my career. So what's the plan? Well, the plan is that we are going to rejoin Europol.
Farage went as far as to blame Starmer for the recent anti-immigration riots that have erupted in various parts of the country, arguing that these disturbances are a direct result of the Labour leader's inability to control immigration effectively. Before we start, please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more updates. Farage's critique is rooted in a broader narrative that has been brewing within the UK's political landscape for some time. Immigration has always been a contentious topic, but in the post-Brexit era, it has taken on new dimensions. The promise of taking back control of the country's borders was a central tenet of the Brexit campaign, one that Farage himself championed. However, in the years following the UK's departure from the European Union, the reality of managing immigration has proven to be far more complex than the rhetoric suggested. Farage's attack on Starmer is, therefore, not just about the Labour leader's policies, but also about the broader failure, as he sees it, of the political establishment to deliver on the promises made during the Brexit campaign.
Important brief and this important challenge. And it's great to be here on a sunny day in Kent, the Garden of England. And I used to play football around here for years. The uncompromising, no-nonsense, hard-knocks training school of the Kent Boys League. So I'm very familiar with this part of the world. But after the elections last week, I have to say, it's a part of the world that the Tories are increasingly unfamiliar with. A county not just green and pleasant, but now also turning red. And by the way, on a day like this, I really am sorry that we're doing this indoors, but we'll be out there before too long.
In his tirade, Farage accused Starmer of being out of touch with the concerns of ordinary Britons, particularly those in working-class communities who feel the impact of immigration most acutely. According to Farage, Starmer's leadership has been characterized by a reluctance to confront the difficult issues surrounding immigration, instead opting for what he describes as political correctness and appeasement. This, Farage argues, has created a vacuum in leadership, allowing tensions to fester and eventually explode into the kind of violent protests that have shocked the nation in recent months. The anti-immigration riots that Farage references have been a disturbing development in the UK. These riots, which have taken place in several cities, have been marked by violence, vandalism, and a deep sense of anger among the participants. The protesters, many of whom come from economically deprived areas, argue that immigration has placed an unbearable strain on public services, housing, and jobs. They claim that their communities have been neglected by successive governments, both Conservative and Labour.
Illegal migration is a test of seriousness for all governments and would-be governments. And not just here, right across the world. A symbol, as I said in my conference speech last year, of a more volatile world, an age of insecurity. It's a really hard nut to crack. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Tackling organised crime is always hard, especially across borders. Now, I know that from my work at the Crown Prosecution Service on drug smuggling or counter-terrorism operations. And let's be clear at the start. This is a criminal enterprise that we are dealing with.
And that immigration has only exacerbated their problems. Farage's argument is that these riots are a symptom of a deeper malaise in British society, one that Starmer and his government have failed to address. Farage's critique also touches on the broader issue of leadership. He argues that Starmer lacks the vision and resolve needed to tackle the country's most pressing issues. According to Farage, Starmer's approach to leadership is characterized by indecision and a tendency to avoid taking a firm stance on controversial issues. This, Farage claims, has led to a sense of drift within the government, with no clear direction or strategy for dealing with the country's challenges. In contrast, Farage presents himself as a leader who is unafraid to speak the truth, no matter how uncomfortable it might be, and who is willing to take bold action to protect the interests of the British people. One of the key areas where Farage believes Starmer has failed is in his handling of the asylum crisis.
Has revealed all. A hard-hitting column in the Sun newspaper today. He is going to smash the gangs. He's going to treat the gangs as if they were terrorists. And we're going to take a lead in Europe. I have heard that once or twice before in my career. So what's the plan? Well, the plan is that we are going to rejoin Europol. Not Interpol. Interpol, where nation-state police forces cooperate together. No, Europol, which is the European Union's own police force. But here's the bit I can't believe.
The UK has seen a significant increase in the number of asylum seekers arriving on its shores, many of whom are fleeing conflict and persecution in their home countries. This has placed immense pressure on the country's asylum system, leading to delays in processing applications and a growing backlog of cases. Farage argues that Starmer's government has been too slow to respond to this crisis, allowing the situation to spiral out of control. He also accuses Starmer of being too lenient in his approach to immigration, arguing that this has only encouraged more people to attempt the dangerous journey to the UK. Farage's criticism extends beyond the issue of asylum to encompass the broader immigration system. He argues that the UK's immigration policies are too lax, and that this has led to an influx of people who do not contribute to society, but instead take advantage of the country's welfare system. Farage's rhetoric on this issue is incendiary, as he suggests that immigration is eroding the cultural and social fabric of the UK. He claims that the country is losing its identity, and that the government, under Starmer's leadership, is failing to protect the interests of native Britons. Starmer, for his part, has defended his government's record on immigration, arguing that they have taken steps to tighten border controls and improve the efficiency of the asylum system. He has also emphasized the importance of compassion in dealing with refugees and asylum seekers, arguing that the UK has a moral obligation to help those in need. However, these arguments have done little to appease Farage and his supporters, who see them as further evidence of Starmer's weakness and lack of resolve. The political implications of Farage's attack on Starmer are significant. Immigration is an issue that has the potential to sway large numbers of voters, particularly in key marginal constituencies. Farage's critique taps into a deep well of frustration and anger among many Britons who feel that their concerns about immigration have been ignored by the political establishment.
Not just about the events in Southport, but about societal decline that is happening in our country. Law and order, folks, on our streets is breaking down. This Prime Minister hasn't got an earthly clue how to deal with it. We need to start getting tough. We need to use stop and search, regardless of the colour of the skin of anyone that gets stopped. We need tougher prison sentences for anybody carrying a knife. We need folks to get real. Because I tell you what you've seen on the streets of Hartlepool, of London, of Southport.
By positioning himself as the voice of these disaffected voters, Farage is seeking to undermine Starmer's support base and create a rift within the Labour Party. Farage's assault on Starmer also raises questions about the future direction of UK politics. The issue of immigration is unlikely to go away anytime soon, and it will continue to be a major point of contention in the lead-up to the next general election. Farage's rhetoric suggests that he sees this as a winning issue, one that can be used to galvanize support for his own brand of populist politics. Whether or not this strategy will be successful remains to be seen, but it is clear that immigration will be a central battleground in the fight for the future of the UK. In the midst of this political maelstrom, Starmer faces the daunting task of trying to navigate a path that satisfies both the demands of his party's traditional base and the broader electorate. This is no easy feat, particularly when dealing with an issue as divisive as immigration. On the one hand, there are those within the Labour Party who believe that the government should take a more compassionate and inclusive approach to immigration, focusing on integration and support for refugees. On the other hand, there are those who argue that the party needs to be tougher on immigration in order to win back voters who have drifted towards the right in recent years. Starmer's response to Farage's attacks has been measured but firm. He has dismissed Farage's rhetoric as fear-mongering and has accused him of trying to exploit people's anxieties for political gain. Starmer has also sought to shift the focus away from immigration and onto other issues.
I now call the leader of Reform UK, Nigel Farage.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker-elect, thank you very much indeed. We are the new kids on the block. We have no experience in this Parliament whatsoever, even though some of us have tried many times over the years previously to get here. So we can't judge you from working in this place, but we can judge you from the way the outside world sees you. And I don't just mean the United Kingdom, I mean the world, because Prime Minister's Questions time is global box office politics, and it's pretty clear to everybody that you act with great neutrality, that you have brought tremendous dignity to the role as Speaker, so we absolutely endorse you.
Such as the economy, healthcare, and social justice, where he believes Labour has a stronger message. However, this strategy is fraught with risk, as it may be seen by some as an attempt to avoid addressing the immigration issue head-on. In many ways, the clash between Farage and Starmer is emblematic of the broader polarization that has come to define UK politics in recent years. The country is deeply divided on issues such as immigration, Brexit, and national identity, and these divisions are reflected in the increasingly combative and acrimonious tone of political discourse. Farage's attacks on Starmer are part of this broader trend, as he seeks to capitalize on the growing sense of disillusionment and anger among certain segments of the population. However, it is worth noting that Farage's own record on immigration is far from unblemished. As the leader of the UK Independence Party, UKIP, and later the Brexit Party, Farage was instrumental in pushing for the UK's departure from the European Union, a move that was largely driven by concerns about immigration. However, since Brexit, the UK has struggled to develop a coherent immigration policy that balances the need for control with the demands of the economy and the humanitarian imperative to support refugees. Farage's critics argue that his simplistic and often inflammatory rhetoric on immigration has done little to solve the underlying issues and has instead contributed to the polarization of the debate. Moreover, Farage's tendency to scapegoat immigrants for the country's problems has been criticized as dangerous and irresponsible.
Migration, where we are resetting our approach, and that's been central today. We are going to smash the gangs, break their business model, and secure our borders. And we'll do this not by committing taxpayer money to gimmicks, but with practical solutions that are in line with international law. To stop illegal migration, we must also tackle it at source. So today I'm announcing £84 million of new funding for projects across Africa and the Middle East.
By framing immigration as a threat to the UK, Farage risks inflaming tensions and exacerbating divisions within society. His rhetoric has been linked to a rise in hate crimes and xenophobic attacks, as well as a growing sense of alienation among immigrant communities. Critics argue that Farage's approach to immigration is not only morally questionable, but also counterproductive, as it undermines efforts to foster social cohesion and integration. The question of leadership is central to Farage's critique of Starmer, but it also raises questions about Farage's own leadership credentials. While Farage is undoubtedly a charismatic and influential figure, his record in public office is limited, and he has often been accused of being more interested in rhetoric than in governance. Farage's critics argue that his attacks on Starmer are part of a broader pattern of populist politics, where complex issues are reduced to simplistic slogans and scapegoating. They argue that Farage's approach is more about stoking division than offering real solutions to the country's problems. In contrast, Starmer presents himself as a more measured and pragmatic leader, someone who is willing to grapple with the complexities of immigration and other issues. While this approach may not be as immediately appealing as Farage's more combative style, it has the potential to resonate with voters who are looking for stability and competence in their leaders. Starmer's challenge is to convince these voters that his approach to immigration is not only more humane, but also more effective in the long term. The recent anti-immigration riots that Farage blames on Starmer's leadership are indeed a significant and troubling manifestation of the deep divisions within British society. These riots have not only highlighted the frustrations of certain segments of the population, but have also exposed the failures of successive governments, including Starmer's, to address the root causes of these tensions. The complexities of immigration, intertwined with economic insecurity, social alienation, and cultural fears, have created a volatile mix that has proven difficult for any government to manage effectively. Farage's argument hinges on the idea that these riots are not an isolated phenomenon,
as if they were terrorists. And we're going to take a lead in Europe. I have heard that once or twice before in my career. So what's the plan? Well, the plan is that we are going to rejoin Europol. Not Interpol. Interpol, where nation-state police forces cooperate together. No, Europol, which is the European Union's own police force. But here's the bit I can't believe. Even as members of the European Union, we did not join the European Union's refugee and asylum policy. We stayed out of it. But Starmer says that we will rejoin it. We'll do a deal with Brussels. He'll be off to see President Macron next week.
but rather the inevitable consequence of Starmer's weak leadership on immigration. He contends that by failing to take decisive action, Starmer has allowed these tensions to simmer unchecked until they finally boiled over into violence. Farage points to what he perceives as the government's reluctance to enforce stricter immigration controls and its failure to address the concerns of communities that feel overwhelmed by the influx of immigrants. According to Farage, this inaction has led to a situation where the frustrations of the native population have spilled out onto the streets in the form of riots. However, the reality of the situation is far more nuanced than Farage's critique suggests. Immigration is a complex issue that touches on a wide range of factors, including economic needs, humanitarian obligations, and international relations. The influx of immigrants, particularly refugees and asylum seekers, is often driven by factors beyond the control of any single government, such as conflicts in other parts of the world, global economic trends, and environmental crises. Moreover, the challenges associated with immigration are not unique to the UK. They are shared by many other countries that have struggled to balance the demands of sovereignty with the realities of globalization and international law. Starmer's approach to immigration, while criticized by Farage as too lenient,
and the hope it finds in its victims, the common humanity that ultimately it seeks to extinguish. And not so long ago, back in 2016, I went for myself to visit the refugee camps on the outskirts of Calais. It was winter, I think it was February. It was absolutely freezing. The ground was mud, sodden with rain and human waste. And I saw children there, two in particular in my mind, who were the same age as my children. Back then, that was age 5 and age 7, huddling together in a tent that offered almost nothing in the way of warmth. A desperate situation.
reflects an attempt to navigate these complexities in a way that balances the various competing interests at play. On one hand, Starmer's government has recognized the need for tighter border controls and has implemented measures aimed at curbing illegal immigration and reducing the number of asylum seekers entering the country. On the other hand, Starmer has also emphasized the importance of compassion and humanity in dealing with those who are fleeing persecution and seeking refuge in the UK. This dual approach is indicative of the broader challenge faced by any government trying to manage immigration in the modern world. How to be firm but fair. How to control borders without closing off the country to those in genuine need. Yet, despite these efforts, the situation remains fraught with difficulties. The asylum system in particular has been overwhelmed by the sheer number of applicants, leading to delays and a growing backlog of cases. This has created a sense of frustration both among the asylum seekers, who are left in limbo for long periods, and among the general population, who see the system as broken and ineffective. Farage's criticism of Starmer taps into this frustration, portraying the Labour leader as out of touch and unable to get a grip on the situation.
On track to surpass the record set in 2022. Now, I want to be clear, I'm not impliedly criticising the reporting here. If a government source tells you that it's going to build a wall in the English Channel, you better believe that is a story. But the question this record must raise is whether the latest gimmick, the Prime Minister's Rwanda scheme, can really be taken as a serious solution to this important challenge. I don't think so. They will get flights off the ground. I don't doubt that. But I also don't doubt that this will not work. A policy that will see just a few hundred people removed to Rwanda a year.
In this context, Farage's attacks on Starmer serve a dual purpose. On one level, they are a direct assault on Starmer's leadership, aimed at undermining his credibility and weakening his position both within his party and with the electorate. By portraying Starmer as weak and indecisive, Farage seeks to position himself as a stronger, more capable alternative, someone who is willing to take the tough decisions that Starmer allegedly shirks. On another level, Farage's critique is also an attempt to shift the narrative on immigration in a direction that is more favorable to his own political agenda. By framing immigration as a crisis and blaming it on Starmer's leadership, Farage is able to push his own hardline stance as the only viable solution to the problem. However, Farage's argument is not without its flaws. While it is true that the UK's immigration system is under strain, it is also the case that the challenges associated with immigration are not solely the result of government policy. The global nature of the issue means that any national government, regardless of its stance on immigration, will inevitably face difficulties in managing the flow of people across its borders. Moreover, the economic and social impacts of immigration are not as straightforward as Farage suggests. While there are undoubtedly pressures on public services and housing in certain areas, there is also evidence to suggest that immigrants contribute positively to the economy, filling labor shortages and supporting growth in key sectors. Furthermore, the notion that immigration is the primary cause of the recent riots is itself a simplification of a more complex reality. While immigration may be one factor in the unrest, it is not the only one. The areas that have seen the most intense anti-immigration protests are often those that have been hit hardest by economic decline, where jobs are scarce, wages are low, and public services are under strain. In these communities, immigration is often seen as a convenient scapegoat for deeper structural problems that have been decades in the making.
Now, these plans will be fiercely resisted. Of course they will. That's par for the course on this issue. I have no doubt that the British people fully support a rules-based asylum system. No doubt that the fair-minded majority want a system that can secure Britain's borders and uphold this country's fine tradition of providing sanctuary for people fleeing persecution. But this is a debate that has been captured by polarising voices. So every solution must run a gauntlet of bad faith objections just to get a hearing.
Farage's focus on immigration as the root cause of the riots overlooks these broader economic and social issues, which are likely to be more significant drivers of the unrest. Starmer, for his part, has sought to address these underlying issues as part of a broader strategy to tackle the causes of discontent in the country. His government has invested in economic regeneration projects aimed at revitalizing deprived areas and has pledged to increase funding for public services such as healthcare, education, and housing. Starmer has argued that by addressing these root causes, it will be possible to alleviate some of the pressures that have led to the rise in anti-immigration sentiment. However, this approach requires time and political capital, both of which are in short supply in a climate of increasing polarization and hostility. The polarization that has come to define British politics in recent years is both a cause and a consequence of the immigration debate. Farage's attacks on Starmer are a reflection of this polarization, as they seek to exploit the divisions within society for political gain. By framing immigration as a crisis and blaming it on Starmer's leadership, Farage is able to galvanize support among those who feel most alienated and disillusioned with the current political system. However, this approach also risks deepening those divisions, as it pits different groups against each other and stokes fears about the impact of immigration on the country's future. In contrast, Starmer has tried to adopt a more conciliatory approach.
Country for their family, for their community, and they want the country to go forward. And what I want is a decade of national renewal where people say, I may not be tribally Labour, I may not have always voted Labour, but I actually think this is a good, serious proposition about improving our country. And I make no bones about that. That may be because I came into politics late in life, because I didn't spend my whole sort of formative years in the tribal politics of Westminster. But it matters to me that we're able to have a project which reasonable people feel I can get behind that. Thank you, Anushka. I better give slightly shorter answers, otherwise I was going to be here all day. Chris, that's no reflection on your question.
Alistair can be as long as you like. Hi, Chris Layton from BBC News. Can I push you, Keir Starmer, on the specifics of what success looks like?
Emphasizing the need for unity and social cohesion in the face of the challenges posed by immigration. He has argued that the country needs to move beyond the divisive rhetoric that has characterized the immigration debate in recent years and focus instead on finding common ground. This includes recognizing the legitimate concerns of those who feel that their communities are being adversely affected by immigration, while also acknowledging the contributions that immigrants make to the country and the need to uphold the UK's humanitarian obligations. However, finding this common ground is easier said than done, especially in a political environment where immigration has become such a toxic issue. The challenge for Starmer is to find a way to bridge the gap between different sections of society while also addressing the practical issues associated with managing immigration in a way that is both effective and humane. This requires not only strong leadership, but also a willingness to engage with the complexities of the issue and to resist the temptation to resort to simplistic solutions. Farage's critique of Starmer's leadership is in many ways a reflection of the broader challenges facing the UK as it grapples with the issue of immigration in the post-Brexit era. The promise of taking back control of the country's borders was a central theme of the Brexit campaign, and it was one that resonated with many voters who felt that their concerns about immigration had been ignored by the political establishment. However, the reality of managing immigration in a globalized world has proven to be far more challenging than the Brexit rhetoric suggested, and the country is still struggling to find a way to reconcile the demands of sovereignty with the need to engage with the wider world. In this context, Farage's attacks on Starmer can be seen as part of a broader effort to shape the post-Brexit narrative on immigration in a way that is favorable to his own political agenda. By portraying immigration as a crisis and blaming it on Starmer's leadership, Farage is able to position himself as the champion of those who feel most threatened by the changes brought about by globalization. However, this narrative also risks reinforcing the divisions that have come to define British society in recent years, as it pits different groups against each other and stokes fears about the future. Starmer's challenge is to find a way to navigate these divisions and to offer a vision of the country's future that is inclusive and forward-looking. This requires not only addressing the practical issues associated with immigration, but also engaging with the deeper anxieties that underpin the debate. This includes recognizing the legitimate concerns of those who feel that their communities are being left behind by the forces of globalization, while also challenging the scapegoating of immigrants and promoting a more positive and inclusive vision of the country's future. The political stakes are high, as the immigration debate is likely to be one of the key issues in the next general election. Farage's attacks on Starmer are part of a broader effort to shape the terms of the debate in a way that is favorable to the right, by framing immigration as a crisis and positioning himself as the only leader willing to take the tough decisions needed to solve it. However, Starmer's response will be crucial in determining whether he can successfully navigate the complexities of the issue and offer a compelling alternative to Farage's hardline stance. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, do you agree with Farage's criticism of Starmer? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.